All right, let's get to CNN. Wanted to make sure we covered. There were two wild things that happened on CNN. Both, it appears, on the topic of race. So let's start with the first. There was a segment in which you had a pro-Trump supporter who was black against a Kamala supporter and a host, and some wild language was used. Let's take a listen.
If you're an African-American man, look, let me boil this election down in the African-American community to a very simple, I'll reference the great Malcolm X. This race is between House African-Americans and field African-Americans. And the field African-Americans are going for Donald Trump. I'm talking about your men who build, your men who put things together, your men who work with their hands, your men who do things, not the men who push paper, or the men who are connected to power and want to continue to be connected to power.
Are you denigrating African-American men who are professionals who work in white-collar jobs? Is that what I'm hearing from you, or?
No.
I'm just trying to understand, is Shelley the House one or the field one? I'm just trying to understand that part. I'm just trying to understand. We have someone who's spitting. I'm just trying to understand the one that's spitting talking points right now. Are you the House Negro or the field Negro that you're referring to? So I just want to make sure your question was about denigrating black people. That literally was your question. You have a Republican fool who is talking right now about. You literally just said that black men. You actually just said this is an election about House or field. This is the nonsense that we are listening to right now by those that are supporting Donald Trump.
Woo! All right, so that was what's his name?
Wild.
Shelley Winter is his name. He's a pro-Trump radio host. I'm like, man, you know, why would you ever want to use that terminology? There are probably 10 million better ways to make that point. I mean, in a certain sense, you're like, I get what you're trying to say. You're talking about highly educated, like elite black voters versus like people who are blue collar. But you're like, dude, that is not the appropriate analogy.
80% roughly, perhaps more, of black people in this country are going to vote for Kamala.
Yes, that's right.
So you are insulting 80% of black Americans. Not to mention, there are plenty of professional black men and women who will also be pulling the lever for. I mean, it's just, look, Barack Obama's lecturing a black man got nothing on this guy, and just absolute slander against a vast swath of the country.
The funny thing too is I remember, because I was reading this about Malcolm X, the whole point of this, the whole like tirade that he gave was actually to speak against civil rights activists at the time, like Martin Luther King Jr., because he described them that way for trying to work within the political system and to, quote, please the white master. Whereas, I mean, he eventually completely changed his entire ideology. But in the 1960s, in 1963, when he gave this speech and he was still part of the Nation of Islam, it was about black nationalism and an ideology of actually there's nothing that the white man can do for this, which he then later denounced. So that's why it's part of the other reason why you really shouldn't be using that analogy, and especially looking at, well, who was a little bit more successful in the long run by working within that, and who ended up actually denouncing his own framework that he puts forward. So there you go. That was wild. Second, and I guess on the other side of that, was another wild moment where our friend Ryan Gerdusky, who's been on CNN a little bit more, had a moment where he revealed a lot, I think, about CNN. And he mentioned the Ferguson and the Floyd effect. Now, I guess I have to explain this. I thought any reasonable person who reads the news would know what it is. That is an idea which came about after Ferguson, and specifically a lot of the BLM movement from 2015, where there was a rise in crime as a result of the BLM riots and or demonstrations. The idea being that police were more afraid to pull over people.
Police were kind of like quiet quitting, basically.
Police were quiet quitting, which led to an increase in crime. It is not a difficult concept. If you are, I'm going to say 10% familiar with debates about criminal justice and about crime, you're going to know what these two things are. Watch what happens when he uses this term on CNN, specifically with some people who are so-called black activists, and they've never even heard of it before. Let's take a listen.
Just yesterday, Ryan, about how, in the context of riots, he was saying, let's just bring the military into it to deal with American citizens. I mean, that happened yesterday.
Right, but the post-George Floyd riots resulted in an excess of over 15,000 black male deaths in this country. How?
Yeah.
The surge of violent crime, it was like Ferguson, the Ferguson effect and the Floyd effect.
Respectfully, you got to explain to me how George Floyd's death. Yeah. Because I need causation here.
Yes, because what happens is after the Ferguson riot and after the Floyd riot, policemen, in fear of their jobs many times and political coverage, pull back from their jobs, resulting in an increased level of
listen, I got to stop you there because, hold on.
You can look at the Washington Post.
Ryan, we got to stop you there because you're literally making a connection out of your own conjecture.
No,
you cannot.
It's a real thing. Look up the Ferguson effect. Look up the Floyd effect. It is a real term.
You cannot.
It's a real term. I didn't make this up.
Invent a connection between two things just because you want that connection to be there.
It's like a name. It's a real thing. You can look it up.
Right. It could be a right thing, but it doesn't mean it's accurate.
Let's move on because we use it for
Look it up. I'll send you a reading list after the show.
Before we move on,
hold on. We're talking about things that happened when Donald Trump was president.
Right.
He was the president. So how is he not responsible for it?
Well, the president doesn't control local police departments.
Well, okay, but you're trying to blame crime on Joe Biden.
No, I didn't blame.
Okay, Republicans have blamed crime on Joe Biden, but you cannot. But you're saying that people who died when Donald Trump was president, that's not his fault.
I don't
agree with either blame being assigned to either president. I think
I
presidents
didn't blame Joe
don't
Biden.
have a magic wand.
Okay, I think that is so wild. You tell me what you think. I just can't get over it. It's like, do you not read the news? Bakari Sellers, you don't know what the freaking Floyd or Ferguson effect is? By the way, I looked it up. Abby Phillips, that host, you don't want to know who covered Ferguson for the Washington Post? Turns out it was Abby Phillips. You don't know what freaking Ferguson effect is? Her own paper, while she worked there, under that guy, what was it, Wesley Lowery, they did a million pieces trying to disprove the Ferguson effect. So look, whether you agree or not, how can you possibly not know what it is? I just don't get it. And then she kept cutting him off the whole time, saying it was totally invented. This is an FBI-addressed terminology, just ludicrous. So you give me a reaction. I can't get over it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very clear evidence of what bubbles these people live in, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, as someone on the left, like, I'm very familiar with this. I personally think it's sort of outrageous for cops to, like, quiet quit after because they face scrutiny for, you know, killing unarmed black citizens. But I'm definitely familiar with the term to be able to argue about it and talk about it. And so the fact that, they all seemed like, what are you even talking about? It was kind of wild.
That's what Bakari, and Bakari was like, you made that up. I looked at his reaction on Twitter, too, because a lot of conservatives were looking at this. And, I mean, the reason why I'm not sure it's a bubble thing, and I'm actually like, are you just stupid? Is for you to have a conviction, you should, I would hope, like do a little bit of reading about it. Like you just said, I have met ACAB, BLM people. They'll tell you all about what the Ferguson effect and how it's bullshit, or about the Floyd effect and why that's the wrong way.
I don't think it's that
you don't read about it. You don't investigate. You don't even think.
Listen,
like,
I'm not gonna like opine on their IQ levels, but I can say I think it demonstrates a lack of seriousness about their concern for the problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That I think is fair to say, and it is partly a bubble problem because they're never in whatever their social media news consumption habits were. They were never confronted with this term and have to deal with it and think about what it means and whether the conservatives have a point about it or what the pushback on the left is or any of that. So to me, it displays not so much lack of intelligence, but lack of seriousness about the issue and a sort of like surface level relationship to the protests that they covered.
Yeah, Ryan and I were talking about it yesterday, and I'm like, we both of us combined, how many hours a day do we just spend reading the news? Like, and everything. I mean, every thing even I strongly believe. I read so many counter cases, either to be familiar or just try and change my own mind. I mean, who the hell knows? And I still obviously have a bias problem. I know you do the same thing, just to prepare for every single day of being here. So to watch that, I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, what? Do you even prepare for when you go on your, to talk with confidence on cable television? My rule was always, I thought you need about 30 minutes of reading for every 1 minute of speaking. And what I meant by that is to distill an idea into a concise and thing to be able to address an argument. It takes time. You need to be familiar with the things that are going on, with the news, with all the facts, and then you can try and break down it into a single thing. And even then, here on our show, we talk for almost 2 hours. They're talking for 45 minutes with each other. So maybe that's part of it.
That's what I was gonna, I think that is part of it, because anytime I don't often, they don't invite me on these shows anymore, number one, right. But even when I engage in anything that's like even remotely like this format, it's a reminder to me of, they're like 6 or 8 minute segments.
Yeah.
You don't have to know a lot, because if you just filibuster through one answer or, stick your talking points, then that's it. So you can get away with having a pretty surface level understanding. Mm-hmm. And also, because you aren't oftentimes faced with people who have a different perspective or have facts or, statistics or whatever, that's like uncomfortable for you. You've never had to grapple with that really, or don't have to grapple with it very often outside of the realm of just like, is Trump good or is Trump bad? Then, it can lead to some major blind spots.
Yeah, let's definitely that. Okay, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate you. If there's any breaking news, obviously, we'll see you over the weekend. Otherwise, we're going to see you all on Monday. Thanks so much to our premium subscribers. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.